You can find lots of kind of memorabilia related to him online. The church has even had to work with the Italian police to crack down on the sale of relics because it's blowing up online. There's locks of his hair, or purported locks of his hair rather, that were being sold for around $2,000.
A love for playing Super Mario and wearing jeans. No, not me. I'm Priya, and by any measure, I am certainly no saint. That is, unlike Carlo Acutis, he has become the first millennial saint appointed by the Catholic Church, and those are just some of the reasons that followers say they can relate to him. He died at the age of just 15. That was in 2006 with leukemia. And since he's died, his popularity has grown massively. In fact, it's actually believed that around 1 million people have visited Assisi, which is an Italian hilltop town where his body is preserved. From performing miracles to, it's believed that he's performed, to creating a website dedicated to spreading Catholicism, he earned himself the nickname God's Influencer and also sainthood. On this episode of What in the World, we're asking, how do you become a saint? And is a millennial saint part of a bigger push by the Catholic Church to get more of you interested? Well, we're joined by BBC journalist Chelsea Coates.
Hi.
So who is this new saint? What do we know about Carlo Acutis?
So, as you said, he had quite a short life. He died aged 15 after being diagnosed with acute leukemia. But over the course of his short life, he was not only really devoted to his faith, but really interested in technology and gaming and coding, and he used those hobbies to channel them into trying to teach more people about Catholicism. His friends also say that he was involved in charity work in his local area. They didn't actually know that he was so devoted to his faith, but he attended church regularly, and although his family weren't especially religious, he grew up in Milan in Italy. He really devoted himself to trying to teach more people about the faith and combine his hobbies with learning more about sainthood especially.
And he is the first millennial saint, but he's not actually the youngest ever person to become a saint, is he?
No. So there are actually quite a lot of young saints in the Catholic Church. One example is Saint Jacinta Marto. She was canonized quite a few years ago by Pope Francis in 2017, but she was only 9 years old. So she was from Portugal, and part of the reason that she became a saint is because she was a young shepherd and said that the Virgin Mary appeared to her when she was out farming and tending to her sheep and passed her messages about the future, kind of prophecies. So she's one of the youngest saints that the Catholic Church has, and there are actually saints that are even younger. So one of the ways that you become a saint is if you are a martyr. So that's someone who has died in defense of their faith, for example, in a kind of religious war, or also someone who has died as a result of being persecuted or killed because of their faith. An example of that is the Holy Innocents. So that's a group of children or babies who were killed by King Herod, who was trying to find the baby Jesus. So there are actually saints as young as babies.
Canonisation is something that the Catholic Church has been doing for centuries. So what is the process? How do you become a saint? And how much has it changed over that time as well?
So yes, it has changed a lot over the years, but one thing that's stayed the same is that it's quite a rigorous process. So both by cardinals in the Vatican and Catholics outside who are campaigning for someone to become a saint, people have referred to it as a kind of court case. So you're collecting lots of testimony and evidence about this person's life and what kind of person they were, and then you're even having to get like medical scans and documents about the things that they did in order to present it to the Catholic Church and argue for their cause, which is what you kind of call the case that you present to the church. So you ask if it had changed over the years, and one of the main things that's changed is that before 1983, you used to have to wait 50 years after someone had died before you could present their cause to the Vatican, and that's now been reduced to 5 years. So that's part of the reason we're seeing younger saints or more a millennial saint now. So after 5 years, you can present all the evidence you've gathered about a person's life to a special department of the Vatican called the Dicastery for the Causes of Saints. And this is a kind of secretive department of the Vatican, full of cardinals, but also a medical board that assess things, all the evidence that you've submitted, to decide, essentially, is this a good role model that we want other Catholics around the world to look up to? And then after they've assessed all of that evidence, that's still not enough. There's another step to take, which is miracles.
This is a pretty key step, and I mentioned it at the beginning. There are 2 miracles that Carlo is believed to have performed. What do we know about those?
Yes, so the first miracle is thought to have been in Brazil. So in 2019, the family of a 3-year-old boy in Brazil submitted lots of medical scans and evidence to the Vatican, claiming that their son, who had a serious pancreatic disease, so he was only on a liquid diet, he couldn't digest solid food, had prayed to Carlo Acutis, and he had kissed a relic that had travelled to Brazil, so it was a piece of his clothing. And he said that after that he ate a full meal, and so he was kind of miraculously healed. So that's usually the kind of miracle that we see in the Catholic Church. They're usually defined by the Church as kind of sudden, unexplained acts of healing. And those are the 2 kind of cases that Carlo had, and that we're seeing more recently in the Catholic Church, is when people are suddenly healed of really serious illnesses. So after you have at least 2 of those miracles, you can become a saint. But before, it used to be even more. So the process has actually become more streamlined and a lot faster in recent years.
And how have Catholics been reacting to Carlo's canonisation?
So as you mentioned, he's proved to be pretty popular with Catholics. Over 1 million people have visited his remains in Assisi. You can find lots of kind of memorabilia related to him online that's selling.
Selling for quite a lot.
Exactly, selling for quite a lot. The Catholic Church has even had to work with the Italian police to crack down on the sale of relics because it's blowing up online. There's locks of his hair, or purported locks of his hair rather, that were being sold for around $2,000. So the kind of enthusiasm for Carlo is exploding online and also around the Catholic Church. We've actually been speaking to some young Catholics to see what they think about the newest saint to join the Catholic Church. So here's Audrey.
He really demonstrated how being a saint, which is what all Catholics should strive for, can be so simple and achievable. So in that sense, I would say he is a saint figure that the Catholic Church cannot miss out on.
So Chelsea, why has the Catholic Church decided now to appoint a millennial saint?
Well, some Catholics believe that it's in connection to the fact that this is quite a significant year for the Catholic Church. It's a Jubilee year, and that's something that happens every 25 years. It's seen as a way for believers to kind of restart their faith and restart their connection with God. So some people think that it's been done to connect with that year, or to coincide with it, rather. But also, the saints that the Catholic Church chooses say a lot about how it wants to be perceived. So if we look at Carlo, he doesn't only stand out because of the fact that he is quite young and he's a millennial. It's also his love of technology, his love of coding and gaming. The fact that he's been dubbed God's influencer by the Vatican shows that they're trying to not only connect more with young people, but also connect themselves more with kind of moving into a future era. So one example of how they're using social media, or rather how younger Catholics are using social media in order to kind of connect with each other and share things about their faith, is the social media site Pope Crave. I'm not sure if you saw after Pope Francis died, they were sharing lots of memes from the popular movie Conclave about the process of electing a new pope. We've actually spoken to them to see what they think about the process of canonizing new saints and what they think about Carlo.
Pope Crave had the opportunity to be at the Vatican during the canonization weekend. It was really interesting to see how people engaged with St. Carlo at the Vatican. It's clear that St. Carlo was a point of conversation. people were taking St. Card selfies with the St. Carlo banner and repping handmade St. Carlo merch. It's clear to us that people are drawn to a saint that lived in a recognizable world. St. Carlo's not from some distant time. He used internet browsers, saw memes, and cosplayed Spider-Man. He's relevant for the world that people still live in. And based on what Pope Leo has said, it's clear that the church is working out ways to navigate in a world reliant on technology. We have seen moves forward with the Luce mascots and the live stream drone show in the Pharrell concert as part of this same being on top of the online and pop culture pulse.
So increasingly young Catholics are using social media in order to speak to each other about their faith and kind of share their opinions on how the church is changing, but also to speak to the Vatican directly. It makes sense that at this time the Catholic Church is trying to connect with that because that's the way that the world is moving and technology is moving.
It's how lots of us will share our interest or the stuff that we're doing in our lives. It's really fascinating. Chelsea, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you.
And that is it for this episode of What in the World. I'm Priya Rai, and we'll speak to you again soon.